Okay, so I believe you guys had seen this before. This is my Holley billet fuel rail kit. Comes with 2 fuel rails, fittings and hoses, and some brackets. Now let me just back up a bit. You see these brackets here? These brackets go to the back of the intake manifold. And a lot of people don't think they really do much. They just kind of sit there. They're not connecting anything or holding anything together. But what they actually do, they're there in the event that there is a collision. They're there to prevent the fuel rails from lifting and spilling, oil all over the hot engine. So that's their purpose. So don't forget to put these in. It's very important that you put these in. It's for safety. Let's set them aside for now. This is a ground strap that GM utilized. Now the book for the instruction booklet by Holley says to use a separate ground strap on each fuel rail. Where the stock setup was just one, and the reason why is because you could see these stock fuel rails are connected with this crossover tube, which is also, some type of metal. However, you don't have a metal connection connecting the 2 fuel rails. You're only going to have this line, which isn't enough. So I'm going to put this strap on one side. Maybe I'll buy a traditional ground strap that you could get at any auto parts store. Or maybe I'll just get another one of these, or maybe I can make one. I don't know if I have any metal like this laying around. I used to, but I used it up. I'm sure this will only cost $1 or $2 or $3. I'll probably just buy another one. Basically, it goes from a manifold bolt, which would be here. The manifold bolt goes here, and then this would be one of the bolts that holds the fuel rails down. So remember, use 2 ground straps, one on each side of the fuel rails. And then I just had this that I have to install. This is a new nozzle for the water meth system that I have. This is a number 6 nozzle. It's the largest nozzle that Snow Performance offers. So I'm going to install this to replace the smaller one that I had, which I don't remember what it was. I think it was a number 5 or number 3. But anyhow, this is the largest nozzle they have. It's a number 6. Okay, that takes care of that. So over here we have my spacers for my fuel rail. These are 12 millimeter spacers, and I got these from K-Tech. It's about 25 bucks. So you get a couple of spacers, longer bolts, and some O-rings. And the reason why I needed this is because the new injectors I got are taller than the ones I had previously in the car, which weren't factory ones. And I don't really remember how many pounds they were, if they were 50, 55, or 60 pound injectors, but somewhere in that vicinity. And I think you guys will like this. I went all out and I got the best. Injector Dynamics ID 1000 100-pound injectors. They actually flow, I believe it's 1015 CFM. So here they are. And again, these are taller than the other ones. So you get these connectors, but I don't have to change the connectors. And here they are. Injector Dynamics. Nicely wrapped, individually wrapped, separated from each other. These are different size O-rings. I'm not going to be using the green ones. I'm just going to keep the red ones. This is the size I need, I believe. These are the size I need. So, yes, I could have gone with cheaper ones, but you might suffer when it comes to, like, idle quality and all these other areas. And these are the Cadillac of injectors. They're probably the most imitated injector out there. And no, 100-pound injectors are not going to, like, overfuel the vehicle. It's not like you're putting a race prepped Holley 850 carburetor on a stock, 305. I was thinking to go with 85-pound injectors, but Injector Dynamics told me, and I also looked on their website, their 85-pound injectors, these 100-pound injectors are the exact same price. They were like $940, and believe it or not, for that price, it doesn't even include shipping. You still had to pay for shipping. So it was almost $1,000 just for these injectors. But the 1000cc injectors are the same price as the 850s. So, these could support, 1,000 horsepower. So that's what I did. So now we're just going to put the injectors in, the fuel rails, hook up the fuel lines. I got my T-bolt clamps, so I could put them in. I'll replace the worm gear ones on all the supercharger plumbing, and then put the coil packs in, and we should be done. Let's get back to the plumbing. Let's get all this set up in this. And oh yeah, one more thing. This is basically the top of the intake manifold. It's just a cover. I don't want to put it back because you have this indent right here for the stock fuel rails, and then you have one over here. And that just looks stupid. It looks like it doesn't belong. And obviously I'm not using the stock fuel rail, so that just doesn't look right to me. I'd like to leave it off, but I have a funny feeling. Now this has that heavy insulation on the inside, this padding. The padding could either be to, I don't know, keep noise down, or to keep it insulated. Maybe keeps the intake cooler. I don't know. I don't want to use it, but I have a funny feeling if I do use it, I have a funny feeling after I put everything back together, and if I don't put it on, I have a funny feeling then I'm going to hear that it's best to have it on there. So that just looks so stupid. I don't know, let me think about it. Alright, I'll be back. I guess the next video I'll show you guys the fuel rails. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, so my decision with the intake manifold cover is to leave it off. I jumped on some forums and there were different opinions on there, but I'm going to leave it off for now. Some people believe that it's, holding in heat. Some people believe it is for noise reduction. This appears to be the only LS manifold that has that added cover with the foam padding in there. So I'm going to leave it off. It looks better without it anyway. Okay, so I got the fuel rails just in place. Those are the injectors I had in before. Those are not the Injector Dynamics injectors. But we've already ran into problems. Now, I initially wanted to run my crossover tube in the back, going across, and then I was going to have the fuel line coming into here, right over here. And I had bought this kit, which just came with those two fittings, 534-211, which allows you to, this is just to plug this one, but with this fitting, it's a quick connect. You could plug it into the stock GM fuel line. So basically I was going to just run it straight up into here. But I was never really happy with the fuel line running right over the header and right over, close to the alternator. And how good would that look anyway? So I was never really thrilled about that idea. But here's the problem. There's not enough real estate. This is the problem corner. So this is the back driver's side. So now even Holly suggested, they show you an example of this is how I was going to do it too. There's the quick connect going to the front there, and then the crossover. But if you have a C6 Corvette and you're trying to do a similar project to this, so this is what you have to do. Goodbye. Because it's not going to work. Because there is not enough room to get all this back there like that. You're like 2 inches short. See that? You're like 2 inches short. There's no way you're getting that there. But you have enough room back there. But then that means the fuel line is going to go from here, across the motor and back there? That would look terrible. So I ran to the local speed shop, and yes, I did get ripped off. Let me take you to the bench. Okay, so I went to the local speed shop. And if I wasn't in the bind, I would never go there, but I want to finish this up, and I'm tired of ordering things and waiting for them to come. So here's what I'm going to do. I got this quick connect, which I'm going to plumb to the fuel line that's located at the very back of the firewall. I'm going to eliminate that steel braided GM line, because if I don't, I would actually have I would actually have 3 fittings before the fuel line meets the fuel rail, 3 connections, and that's 3 points that could leak. So I'm going to eliminate one, and I'm only going to have 2 connections, which for a safety standpoint is much better. So I got this, but this is an 8 AN here, but this is a 6 AN, so I had to get a reducer from 8 AN to 6 AN. So that'll go like that. And then this is going to go here. This is a double swivel, this U-shaped fitting. I bought that 45 just in case, but I'm not going to need it. Alright, so let's go back to the car and let me show you how it's going to work. Okay, so we're back at the car, obviously. So I'm going to eliminate this fuel line. I'm going to disconnect it from there. Because if I don't, then that means I would have to take this fitting, attach this here, and then the way I'm going to run it is I'm going to connect it back there, the fuel line. But with this being so long, I would have to loop it this way and go back, or come across, which would look terrible. So we're going to eliminate this GM steel braided hose. I'm going to take this, I'm going to connect this one there, and now you can see what's happening is then the fuel line will then be routed behind the engine and over to there, just like that. So if you're doing a similar project and you're going to buy those fuel rails, don't buy this kit, this additional kit, this 534211. I mean, you could, but get yourself a similar setup to this. And that should work. All right. I'm going to work on the crossover line right now. I guess I'll show you guys how to do that. I made a video when I was working on the steam vent lines on how to work those hoses, but I guess I'll make another one for here. Alright, give me a few minutes, I'll be back. Okay, so I measured for my crossover tube, and I need roughly 8 inches. So about the center of this electrical tape here is 8 inches. So I'm just going to use my cutoff wheel, do a nice fast clean cut right down the middle. But unfortunately I'm going to have to put the camera down. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, so I cut my hose down to 8 inches. The next thing that you want to do is, let me block the sun, hold on. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is place the socket in a vise. I got these little cheap magnetic clips, got some rubber on the inside. So tighten down on the socket, not too hard. And then you're going to want to feed the line into the socket. And you're going to have to use a screwdriver to pry in some of the freighted lines. I have to do a little more trimming. So basically, when you have the hose in there, you use the screwdriver to pry in the little bits of the freighted line. And what you want to do is you want to insert the line, the fuel line, up until you hit the threads. I don't know if you can see in there. Up until you hit the threads. Right about there. There's a base. Right there. And then back the hose out about a 1/16 to an 1/8 away from the threads. And then you're going to mark the fuel line. And let me get this in there and then I'll explain to you why. So remember, put the socket in a vise. You're going to wiggle this in there. You got to use a screwdriver to assist you. Push it in until you bottom out against the threads, and then pull the fuel line back out about a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so I got the hose into the socket. I don't know if you could see. It's hard to tell, but I pulled it out about a 1/16 of an inch. And let me just tell you, as I go along and every time I handle these, I'm always taking my air gun and I'm blowing out all the debris. Especially when you cut, you get a ton of debris. See all that black on the floor? That's all the powder you get from cutting the hose. So make sure you keep cleaning them out. And then before I do the final install, I'll wash these out with warm water and dish soap. And then blow them out again carefully. So I'm going to put some motor oil on the threads here and a little bit here. And then on to the next step. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so I got the nipple in the vise. I got the hose in my hand. And now I'm just going to insert them like that. And I'm going to push in and turn at the same time, trying to get the thread started. And I'm going to be pushing and applying the force from the hose, not from the nipple, from the hose. This way the hose doesn't back out. Now the purpose of putting the blue tape or putting a line right here where the socket meets the braided hose is because when you're tightening the socket onto the nipple, this hose can back out, and you don't want it to back out more than an 1/8. If it does, you got to repeat the steps. So let me get this started and I'll be back. So I've got the hose on as far as I can hand tighten it. Now I'm going to take a wrench and I'm going to tighten the socket. And Holly tells you to leave a 60,000th gap. You don't want the socket to bottom out against the nipple here. So there will be a gap, and that's, what is it, 60,000. So it's 0.060. Alright, so now I'm going to get a wrench, and I'm going to tighten it. I'll put some blue tape so I don't mar the metal. And I will tighten it, and I will leave a 60,000th gap. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, so there it is. I got one side done. I took a feeler gauge, 60 thousandths. I got it right on the money. The line didn't back out, so we're good to go. So I'm going to finish the other side, and then I'll install this, temporarily mock it up. And we're on our way to finishing this project. All right, I'll be back. Okay, so there it is. I've got it set up, my crossover tube. Again, the purpose to put the blue tape, you put the blue tape, or you could use like a pen or a marker. And you want to mark where the braided hose meets the socket. And I just used the blue tape. I put the blue tape up against the socket here, right where my thumbnail is. And as you're tightening these two components, these two fittings together, the hose will want to sometimes push its way out. But how are you going to know that unless you mark it? So, and I didn't have the hose back out on either side. Alright, so let's get this on there and we'll see what it looks like. I'll be back. Alright, so there it is. Looks pretty good. Just got it hand tightened on there for now. Looks pretty good. So now we'll work on this. You're going to need that disconnect tool to remove this line. And I showed you guys earlier how to do that. I'll try to show you again. But I guess let me start getting this set up. We'll take some measurements and hopefully we'll have it plumbed today. Alright, I'll be back. Basically you're going to need a fuel disconnect tool like this. This one's by OEM. It's got side E and side F. Side E is for 3/8, side F is for 5/16. For this vehicle you're going to use side E for 3/8. Basically you're going to slide this behind there, close it, push it in, and it's going to release it. And you got to, first thing you have to do is take this clip off. Just put a screwdriver in this little gap here and pop it off. Alright, let me get to that. I'm going to have to put the camera down, I apologize. So there it is, I got it out. It's very simple. Took a couple seconds. Now I'm going to stick this over that fuel line right there. And then take some measurements and measure out the fuel line to the back passenger side there. And then we should be ready. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I finally got the main fuel line connected. Oh, and change of plans. If you remember yesterday, I had the, over here, I was using the U-shaped fitting. Well, it's a little bit of interference with this vent line. And I also didn't like how it looked. It looked a little funny. So with this line, I put an elbow, and basically it's going to run back there like that. So it'll look something like that, which doesn't look bad at all. So it just looked better than the U-shaped fitting sticking out here and running back there. So it works out better. So now what I'm going to do is take out these old injectors, put the new ones in, set the fuel rails in place. I cleaned all the fuel rails. I'm letting them dry out. I cleaned the crossover tubes and any fittings. I'll plug all that in. Then I will hook up the battery and prime the fuel system. I'm going to leave this disconnected. I'll put this into some kind of jug and hopefully we could pump out some fuel and any debris that might be in the line. I'm not going to pump it all out, just a little bit. So hopefully that'll flush out any contaminants that might be in the main fuel line. And that's it. So let me pop these out, drop in the Injector Dynamics 1000 cc injectors, and we'll take it from there. Alright, I'll be back. Okay, just want to show you guys what I'm doing. I'm prepping the fuel rails. These are the brackets I'm going to use. The kit comes with two kinds of brackets, but I'm going to be using these. And if you're using, I guess it's an LS3s, the bracket, you can see there's a bolt hole there that's not being used. The bracket goes towards the outside of the fuel rails. See that? Okay. So this one here, this is for the driver's side. So the back just gets the plug, and then the front gets the nipple. And then this one is for the passenger side. So the back gets the nipple, that's where the fuel line's gonna connect to. And the front gets a nipple. So the crossover tube will go from here to here. And that's this right here. Again, these are my 12mm spacers, and these are my new injectors by Injector Dynamics. They're a little taller than the ones I was using previously, so that's why I need the spacer. I put a little bit of Loctite on these bolts. These are 5/32 torque bolts. And I put a little Loctite as added insurance. You don't want them coming loose, even though they have a lock washer. You don't want them coming loose, and God forbid the fuel rail lifts while you're driving. You're going to have fuel being pumped all over the place. That's very bad. Alright, so now I'm going to stick the injectors into the injector ports. They just slide right in. I will put a little bit of oil on the lower and the upper O-rings. Just a little bit of motor oil around the O-ring and slide them in. And then I will set them in place into the manifold with the injectors already in the fuel rail. Alright, so let me get to it and I'll be back. And again, I had washed all this again with just warm water and dish soap, and then dried them carefully and used my air gun. So everything has been cleaned. Alright, I'll be back. I got the fuel system set up. I just primed the fuel pump. There's no way to really prime this fuel pump on the C6 Corvette. What I did was I just disconnected the main fuel line, tied it to a soda bottle. You got to actually crank the motor over, and then it'll pump out. So it pumped out. I think I got like a quart of oil, a quart of gas pumped out. So I'm sure that pumped out enough gas if there was any contamination. It looks pretty clean. So there's no real way to prime this without turning the motor over. It spun over good, no problems. Now we just got to hook up the coil packs. Got to hook up this main fuel line over there. Things to do before you start the motor. You have to prime your steering system. So I filled the reservoir like halfway with power steering fluid. You then have to jack up the front of the car. You got to get the tires off the ground, and then you turn the wheel from lock to lock about 20 times. And then, you know, the fluid went down. So then I filled it back up. So it's at the proper level now. But that's how you prime your steering system. So just jack up the front wheels, get the front wheels off the ground, turn lock to lock, left to right about 20 times. That'll prime that, that'll get any air out and prime your steering system, steering fluid. What else? Okay, I did prime the fuel. Now, alright, so let me get the coil packs on. Let me hook up that line. I put my old spark plugs in. I took the new ones out. I put my old ones back in because it's not tuned for this setup, so it foul out the plug. So there's nothing wrong with my old one, so it's good enough to fire. So that's that. Let me get to work and I'll be back. Hopefully the next video I will be firing this thing up and we can hear some music. Oh, can't wait. Alright, I'll be back.